Hey, welcome to the Hurt Locker, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Logan Erner here. Let's catch the show live and follow and subscribe on YouTube, Ghost and Friends at 40 Acre Vibes. You can catch it on live on X as well. But I think the proper way to do it is to go on YouTube and follow and subscribe for me. That'd be great. Fantastic. Love it. There's a little follow me on X at LowHurt24, or you can follow the show live on X as well at Hurt Locker Show. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We got a good one today. We got a little recap of the disappointment and the big the big name teams. Not as much. We're going to focus on the G5 for the most part today. But there was some G5 ones that or non G5 ones, P4 ones that we can mention here today as well. Obviously, some big disappointed teams. Alabama being the number one, I think that people are talking about that are very, very disappointed with how their weekend went. Looking forward to digging into this one today. Pretty early, we're going to go the good, the bad, and the ugly. Good, the bad, and the ugly. This is going to be a segment that I like to do and tune into every week. Usually I've done the uniforms in the past, but now since we're picking up with games going on, I can do the good and the bad and the ugly for games this week. I've been waiting all week to get to this. My Oregon State Beavers, man, we got to start with the ugly on this week. The ugly is going to be Oregon State. Oregon State, ugly performance, absolutely embarrassing performance um, against Cal at home for a home opener. I mean, you come out and there was really, you come out, you started off strong. Your first stop of the game, you're going 3-and-out with a true freshman quarterback at Cal who's got all this hype around him. We're thinking, oh my gosh, we got to stop, right? Our defense can stop a nosebleed last year. We go 3-and-out. You roll the punt team out there. All of a sudden, we have 12 guys on the field and we don't call a timeout. And there we are. Penalty, 12 men on the field, gives them an automatic first down. 4 plays later, Cal goes and scores a touchdown. First touchdown of the game, 7-0 Cal off the rip. Went from high expectations, high energy, place was going nuts, to completely flat, deflated. Everybody's like, wow, what just happened? Like, we just had to stop. What did we do wrong? Yeah, it completely turned the whole momentum already of the game so early, turning that into something. And Oregon State from then on out in the entire game, what's crazy is we actually played realistically pretty well on defense, minus the score of 34-15 losing to Cal. The defense actually played phenomenal. When you look at it, we went 6 consecutive stops. So after the first possession, second possession, they go down, they score on us again. We rush 3 on a 3rd and long. Guy scrambles for 7 to 8 seconds and throws a back shoulder touchdown. They go up 14-0 just like that in the first quarter. From then on, we went 6 consecutive stops on defense, and we couldn't get any points on the board. Oregon State, ugly in terms of we need an identity. There was no identity to the game. Malik Murphy in his opening start honestly didn't look that bad. There's a lot of people, lots of slander going on Malik saying, "Oh, we spent 1.9 million on this guy. Like, what a chump. This guy sucks." Realistically, arm talent, his feet, how he reads a defense, everything about him and his posture and just how he plays the game and looks might be the best quarterback Oregon State's ever had in terms of just those aspects of the game. There isn't anything that I can say negative about how he played the game other than how the coordinator was, and the play calling was atrocious. That was our biggest downfall, was the play calling was so bad. I don't know what Gundy was doing. There was so many instances of what is our identity? What are we aiming to do? And the number one thing I saw was we have a 1,000-yard rusher in Anthony Hankerson. He only ran for 42 yards on 15 carries. Of the 15 carries, we only ran an inside zone or a halfback zone anywhere in the A or B gap. We only ran 2 times. Everything else was outside zone, a sweep, a toss, anything to the perimeter, which we're getting blown up on. Nothing was available. Nothing's working out there. And that's when it was like, okay, what is our identity? What have we been so good at in years previous? And it's getting downhill, running into the teeth of the defense and grinding, right? We're making them tired. We're wearing them down. That's the identity Oregon State's always had. So now we're like trying to reinvent the wheel because we have Malik Murphy. We have a guy that we think is mobile and think that he can make plays with his feet and extend plays. And instead, we went the complete opposite direction of what we're really good at. And that was the lack. That's what we were lacking the entire game, and you could tell. So now this week, you have a team with Fresno State who just ran for over 300 yards on Georgia Southern. EJ Warner threw another 2 picks, didn't throw any touchdowns. He looked horrible. So Fresno State, obviously, our identity is going to be run the football. Our running defense, our rush defense looks so great against Cal. Their leading rusher only had 42 yards rushing. We looked fantastic on the run game. So that's really positive going into a week where we know a team's going to try to establish that against us. We need to get back to our roots and establishing the run game as well. Work off the play action. There were several plays over the middle, some deep balls that Malik had that were on the money, spot on. And it's pretty sad when we didn't get into the end zone until halfway or more than halfway in the third quarter, and we finally broke that barrier. This is the week where if you don't score 35 points against Fresno State, who is not a great football team, obviously Georgia Southern didn't look great. They blew out Georgia Southern 42-14. But this is a week you got to score over 35. You got to make a statement. You got to find your identity and who we're going to be the rest of the year. And you got to have a huge comeback win this week. But again, that's going to be the ugly for the week is Oregon State. I can rant on this all day long about the play calling and how bad it was, the situations. The one I'll touch on the most is we have a 3rd and short right before halftime. We take Malik out of the game. We put him on the sideline. We bring Jabari Johnson in the backup quarterback. We'd have a designed quarterback draw for him to run right up the middle. He gets the 2 yards, gets the first down. Ooh, all fine, fun, and dandy. Thank you. We finally got a first down because we didn't have one for the entire first quarter. So now you leave him in the game and you continue to run a bubble screen to your left. It gets blown up, goes nowhere. And then we're going to run a motion to a speed option to our right with him, and it gets blown up, it goes nowhere. Then we bring Malik back on the field for a 3rd and long and run like a halfback wheel to the boundary on the left side, and it goes nowhere. So again, the identity is like, what are we doing? What was the objective of that entire drive? And that's great. You're going to give a guy some other time, but we did pay this guy $1.9 million, and he obviously can sling the ball. Why would you take him out? Do you not really think he could have ran a quarterback draw himself for 2 yards at 6'5", 230 pounds? Just doesn't make any sense. So Gundy, you got to get back to it, dude. You got to figure it out. We're not at UCLA anymore. We're not at San Jose State anymore. We're at Oregon State. And I'm not saying that we're leaps and bounds better than those schools. We're back down to where a Mountain West team should be now. But here we go. It's time to buckle it up. It's time to strap it on and figure it out. And we got to get this thing rolling because you have Texas Tech next week, which is going to be maybe a horrendous game for you if you can't figure it out now. And then you have Oregon at Oregon. So you got 2 really horrible weeks coming up if you can't figure out an identity this week against Fresno State. The bad. We're going to go with the bad here. This one, I don't want to back on them too much, man. It's Army, right? Army. It's America's team. Army losing to Tarleton State in double overtime, 30-27. Atrocious game. You go from Bryson Daly having crazy Heisman-type rushing numbers and only losing a couple games and really being super competitive and winning the conference last year and dominating the conference, really, to losing your home opener against an FCS school in Tarleton State. Tarleton State, for the love of Pete, can we get a different mascot? The Texans, I mean, is that the best you can come? I know you're from Texas, but that's the best you come up with. I guess it's fitting, right? At least it's fitting for the state. Anyway, 30-27, you lose in double OT. You miss a couple field goals late. Really bad luck for Army. Really bad luck. Dwayne Coleman ran for 100 yards, and he threw for 127 yards. Guys, round of applause. Army quarterback threw for over 100 yards in a game. That might be a record, but he threw for 2 picks and no touchdowns. Can we ever find somebody in Army history that can actually throw the football? Is it that hard to find a guy that gets good grades and go to West Point and still throw the ball? Or do we just simply recruit running backs to come to Army and just be a running back because we're hardly ever going to throw it? This might be the time. This might be a wake-up call for them of maybe we need to start recruiting guys that can actually throw a little bit. We can still run the same offense, still have a tough runner. Get a guy like that. Find that diamond in the rough. Find a really diamond version of Lamar Jackson that he can run, but a guy that can throw and at least throw some routes accurately and have a more of a passing game. Give me some more dynamic. I watched majority of this game, and I think they only had 3 passing plays they ran the entire game. So that needs to be touched up on. That's got to be fixed. Hopefully this is a wake-up call for them. Losing Tarleton State in your first game, not a great look. The good, I was going to bring up USF pounding Boise State in the opener, which I already did on the last pod, but I will just touch on that a little bit because they have a huge week coming up, and we'll touch on that later in the show. The good this week, UNLV got back on track, back-to-back weeks scoring 38 points. They beat Sam Houston State 38-21. Good for them, right? Because that's my pick to win the Mountain West Conference. Boise State getting smacked early. Not a good look for them, and now they have hopefully a bounce-back week against Eastern Washington coming up. Facing an FCS school for themselves. The other thing I'd like to touch up on is you have Central Michigan. Central Michigan, which I kind of want to put this as a good. I couldn't decide if I want to put this as a good or a bad or an ugly. It kind of fits in all the categories because it's really bad and ugly for San Jose State, who was favored third overall to maybe win the Mountain West this year. A really, really bad look on their part, losing an opener at home to Central Michigan. Brand new coach. Central Michigan came in and won the game 16-14. San Jose State missed 2 field goals late in the fourth quarter to give them the lead, and ultimately, hopefully, give them the win. Missed 2 field goals. You turn the ball over 3 times, 1 fumble and 2 picks. And Walker Eggett, he threw for 308 yards, guys. 308 yards, had a great game, but the 2 picks and fumble were very costly. San Jose State only ran for 44 yards, so Chippewa's defense really held him down in the rush game. Here's what's crazy. Central Michigan only threw the ball 13 times. 13 times. Joe Lavis was 5 of 10 for 53 yards, and then you had Angel Flores, who was 3 of 3 for 59 yards. So 13 times, 59 yards and 53 yards split between the 2 quarterbacks, and they still somehow won the football game. But they did run for 247 yards on San Jose State's defense. And I know, Ghost, San Jose State playing Texas this week. You're looking for a big bounce-back week for them, which I would assume you're going to get. And I would assume you guys are probably going to run all over them and trounce them a little bit. So the good is UNLV this week, though. I don't know. And it might be good. I'm going to convince myself that this is a good for Central Michigan, coming out and getting an early win like this against another opponent that they weren't supposed to necessarily beat. Obviously the pass game wasn't huge for them, and that's something they need to work on for upcoming weeks. I think if they want to be successful in the conference, they're going to need some sort of passing game, unless you can run for 300 yards a week. If you can run for 300 yards a week, then you're probably going to be fine. But yeah, I like the good for UNLV. I like the good for Central Michigan. One of the other bads and uglies I wanted to bring up was Washington State, considering they are G5 now, only beating Idaho, an FCS school, 13-10. Really, really ugly game. Wazoo only had 3 rushing yards, people. 3 rushing yards against Idaho. Wazoo typically not a heavy rushing team. Usually they're floating in the realm of, 50 rushing yards a week and passing for over 300. That's why they have all these quarterbacks that come out of Wazoo. That's the small QBUs that we like to call it, the farm system for quarterbacks. But 13-10, 3 rushing yards, and Idaho, which is crazy enough, only had 33 passing yards. So pretty ugly game for Wazoo. They go down now. Actually, they host San Diego State this weekend. San Diego State's not a great football team, but it still could be a test. If you struggle with Idaho, you might struggle with San Diego State this weekend, who started off 1-0. I think they beat Stony Brook 42-0 first week, so nothing crazy to flash about there. But yeah, that's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly for this week. And then we're going to get to some top G5 matchups of the week. We have some good ones. There was a couple that I was really picking on in particular. Liberty and Jacksonville State is going to be the first one that I'm going to bring up here. So Liberty was a huge favorite, almost a 30-point favorite against Maine in that first game, and they actually struggled for the majority of the game, and then they finally broke away towards the end. They beat Maine 28-7, so it doesn't seem as close as what it appears, but it was a pretty close matchup, quite honestly. Ethan Vasco was 19 of 33 for 197 yards and 3 touchdowns. So 3 touchdowns is a good aspect, and a good part of, something positive to take out of that game for him. Accuracy needs to be boosted a little bit, especially against a Maine team they were supposed to really beat up on. And then now you're going to go into a game, surprisingly, which I think is going to be more competitive than people were thinking at the beginning of the year. Jacksonville State has been a pretty competitive team. in the last couple of years and in that conference. And I think the first week they kind of made a stamp. Um, they played a team. They played UCF at UCF. UCF was a heavy favorite. No one's given Jackson State a chance. They come out, competed, made it a close game, only lost 17-10 at UCF. So kind of a downer for UCF and upper for Jackson State. And I think they were a 26 and a half point underdog, 27-point underdog, something like that. So yeah, that's going to be um, now I think a pretty good matchup with Liberty. They had a hard time stopping the pass game against UCF. They gave up 300 yards of passing to them. But the rush defense was actually pretty good. I think they only gave up 122 yards rushing between like 4 or 5 different guys, and over a course of a game, which you're thinking UCF should pound these guys, and they didn't. So all in all, only allowing 2.9 yards per rush. Jackson State's defense held up pretty well. So I think them against Liberty, I think it's going to be a close one, but I think it might be kind of a mix mash here of Jackson State's going to be able to throw it a little bit more compared to what they did against UCF. Liberty's hoping to have a better week than they did against Maine, a better showing, but I think it's a competitive one. And the line is -7.5 for Liberty. So I'm going to take the line, and I'm going to take Liberty 28-20 over Jackson State. This one is the one I really like. So this is actually going to include a P4 team, but it's going to include my G5 team, my American winners that I'm predicting. USF, who pounded Boise State in the first week 34-7. The offense with Brown at quarterback was phenomenal, right? He looked like a guy who is established, who has been hungry in the whole offseason of having that injury and coming back from it. And that was kind of the question, was how is he going to look? He looked top notch. He looked like he was ready to go. He's been ready to go, making plays, running people over as a quarterback, being extremely physical, running the football, and then passing the football looked extraordinary. So now Florida, who didn't play anybody in week 1, this is a tough game, man. This is almost a home game for USF for their small little fan base down there. They're going to come into the Gators and come into the Swamp and try to make a statement here. Now, the Gators are a 17.5-point favorite. I do like USF. I don't know to cover, but I do like USF to really compete. I think after the momentum they're having to Boise State and really showing up in that game, Florida's now like, wow, what are we getting into? Is this team actually better than what people think, obviously? So I do like a pretty close matchup. I think Florida might pull away later and really start bearing on USF later in the game. But I do like Florida to win this 34-17 over USF, but you just never know. I would like USF to cover the points there. And I know that's right on the line of the 17.5. It's probably going to be about a 2-touchdown game is what I'm thinking. USF with a lot of proof. And what's even crazier is USF is playing Florida this week and then Miami next week. So they're playing all the local Florida schools and the big name schools, making their resume even more of a heavy hitter early on in the season, getting their feet wet, seeing what's out there, and then they're going to bust in and hopefully get some things done later on. This is definitely going to be the matchup of the week. So matchup of the week, UTSA, Texas State at UTSA is what it's going to be. So you got a battle of Texas here. Battle of Texas. I'm going to take UTSA to win this 34-31. Now, I think it's going to be high scoring, but I think it's going to be maybe a pretty fast moving clock. So it could be lower scoring than this. The over under, I think, is looking at about 65.5. 65.5 here. You got a hometown kid from San Antonio, Texas. Brad Jackson got his first career start as a true freshman for the Bobcats of Texas State. Against Eastern Michigan this last week. They won 52-27. That was one of my picks I had. One of my locks was Texas State -14.5. Easily covered that, and they got the win. He was 18-26 for 214 yards and 4 touchdowns. No interceptions, no fumbles, no turnovers. Great job by Brad in his first week as a freshman. That's always got to feel good as a true freshman coming to your first start and not turning the ball over. That's huge. He's going to need to do that again this week against a pretty solid UTSA team. Lincoln Pear was really, I think, the more impressive one for Texas State. Only 12 carries for 167 yards of offense and a tutty as well. When you have a run game like that and you're gouging a defense for over 10 yards a carry, your chances of beating teams are going to go through the roof. So Obviously, Eastern Michigan is not going to be the best opponent. This is going to be a much tougher opponent against UTSA, and you're on the road, but you're right down the road from San Marcos and San Antonio. It's not that far. It should be a well-traveled game for the road team for the Bobcats. UTSA, another team that really impressed me in week one against A&M. They had some things that weren't so good and then had some things that were. And obviously you expect A&M to maybe handle business against a team like this, which they did later on in the game. It was pretty close, and UTSA was kind of floating around. They did lose 42-24 to A&M, but they did float around for most of the game. Owen McCown did struggle at quarterback for UTSA. He was 19 of 32, only 121 yards. No touchdowns, no picks, though, so he didn't turn the ball over. But the star for them was the running back. Robert Henry Jr. had a hell of a game. 16 carries, 177 yards, and 2 touchdowns against an SEC caliber defense. Impressive. A&M's kind of known to have a decent defense. It's not always the best in the world, but they're usually known to have a good front line. And running for 177 yards on 16 carries, averaging over 11 yards a carry against an SEC defense is nothing to shy away from. It's nothing to really damper. It's ultimately extremely impressive. So, that being said, McCown's struggling throwing the football. He's going to be more down to his level now playing Texas State this week. I think he's going to maybe bounce back and have a little bit better week, hopefully get over that 200-yard mark of passing. The rushing attack, I think it's going to be kind of a crazy rushing attack from both sides. It could just be running up the scoreboard, wasting a lot of clock. Again, this is why I'm thinking UTSA 34, Texas State 31, maybe flip-flop that score. I think it's going to be a heck of a game. So I know the actual spread, if I'm not mistaken, should be 4.5. 4.5 in favor of UTSA, but the line has been fluttering between 4.5 and 3. This is a really hard one to choose. If it was up to me, I would like to go with the over/under on the points. I think the over/under on the points could hit the under. I think it'll be a decently high-scoring game, but the over/under was 65.5. So with the amount of rushing that's going to go on, the clock's going to be chewing up pretty fast, I think. You get a couple stops in there. I do like the under in this game. I know it's going to be really, really close with what I just predicted, but I do like the under ultimately in this game. I could see something like a 34-28, 35-28, something like that. So, yeah, that would be one of my locks for the week, actually. So one of my locks for the week is I'm taking the under on the Texas State and UTSA game, under 65.5 total points. The other ones I really, really like this week is I do like the James Madison and Louisville game. James Madison is one of those top tiered teams that is a smaller school coming up from the FCS now into the FBS level. I think they're a team that usually establishes the run very well. Louisville had an okay first week. James Madison had a pretty good first week. I think this game might be closer than what people think. It is at Louisville. And James Madison does have a decent schedule, a pretty tough schedule this year. This is definitely going to be the toughest one on their schedule, but with the spread coming in at a 15 and a half, I do like James Madison to cover the double digits there. I'm thinking like maybe a 31-21 type game. I do like him to cover the double digits. So there's going to be the other lock for me this week. The other one I got to shout out the boys with the Beavs this week. So Oregon State. Oregon State, this is the week, like I said earlier, you have to have a bounce back week. You got to have a big week of offense. They are favored to -2.5. And I think that is going to be too low. I think that's too low of a level. If we can establish the run defense like we did in week one against Cal, which was one of our strong points, even like I said, giving up 34 points, it doesn't seem like a strong point for defense, but we only gave up 42 rushing yards to their leading rusher. I think if we can stuff Fresno State and we know what they're trying to do to us, which is run the football first, they don't want to throw with EJ Warner. If we can get in his back pocket and get some pressure on him, force some more turnovers, because he is pick happy. If we can get some of those, get some turnovers early and capitalize on those turnovers and really show off what the offense can do. Malik should not be having to throw the ball more than 30 times a game. This last week, he didn't have any touchdowns besides one rushing touchdown late in the fourth. He had a pick late in the fourth, but when you're down 20 points, you got to put the ball in the air. They're sitting back, and it was 3rd and long. They came across and picked the ball off. I'm not blaming anything on Malik. This is going to be one of those weeks where he needs to show his abilities and what he's capable of. Really put the doubters to sleep. That -2.5 for the Oregon State Beavers is going to be the play this week. I know you guys are probably like, wow, why are you saying Oregon State every week? I said Oregon State last week against Cal because I had the ride with we need to win week 1 so badly. And it didn't happen. We got owned. And Cal is going to be a type of team this year where they might be a sleeper in the ACC. I was looking at their schedule with their brand new quarterback, JKS. I call him JKS because his last name, I don't want to butcher it. I'll feel bad. He looked really impressive in his first start as a true freshman. He was slinging all over the yard. He had a couple dimes of deep balls that one of them turned into a touchdown, the back shoulder. On the 3rd and long, rushing only 3 against him. He had all the time in the world to make a play and kind of redirect his receiver and throw a touchdown out of that. He had a couple dimes all throughout the game, and actually Oregon State DBs made great plays down the field. And that's another reason why I think our defense is actually maybe getting to be more of our stronger suit this year, which would be crazy to think because last year we were 132nd in the country or whatever it was. And you really, when you get over that when you get over the top 50 mark of defenses, you're probably just pretty bad in general. And we were horrible. So I think that's going to play into a huge effect this week. Stop the run game, stop what they're trying to do to us, force them to throw the football, and then let's show Malik's ability off. Let's get back to the roots. Let Hankerson get over 100 rushing yards this game. He needs to be another 1,000-yard rusher back-to-back years. So let's go at it. And we know Trent Walker is going to be our best receiver. He showed it in week 1 here with over 100 yards receiving. We know that they're probably going to most teams are going to double team him and try to double him and make us go elsewhere. It's going to be a perfect time and a perfect opportunity for somebody else to shine. You got Zach Card. We got a couple other guys. You got guys like Caulfield as a new tight end for us in the system. We traditionally use tight ends very well. It's a big opportunity for those guys to really make a name for themselves and step up to the plate. Let's get this thing rolling, man. Like I said, we need to score over 35 this week and make this thing booming. So there's the picks for the week. There's the locks for the week for G5 teams. I do have some P4 ones, but we'll do that on the next show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're only going to do about a half-hour show this week. I have another one coming up. So thank you for tuning in. This is the Hurt Locker with Logan Hertner. Appreciate you guys. And have a good rest of your weekend. Everybody, good luck on your bets. Go Beavs. And we'll talk to you guys later. Peace.